A 23-year-old Black massage therapist from Aurora, Colorado, died 6 days after a violent police encounter where he was injected with ketamine by paramedics to sedate him. What is going on in Colorado? Let's talk about it. This is Criminal Justice Corner, where we discuss true crime stories. We give the real details surrounding what occurred, and just in case you find yourself in the same situation, we give you actionable advice and tips on how you can potentially get yourself out. I'm your host, Dr. Jennifer Matthews. I have 16 years of experience in the field of criminal justice and a doctoral degree in criminal justice. I'm also an expert in video evidence. Our Criminal Justice Corner store sponsor of the day is Dr. Jennifer Matthews Consulting. Dr. Jennifer Matthews Consulting is a driving force behind digital transformations to solve cases quicker with body cameras, closed-circuit television media, and expert witness testimony. You can find them on the web at drjennifermatthews.com. Today I have with me a special guest, Torey Houseworth. Ms. Houseworth is a former police officer out of Northwest Indiana, a crime analyst, and instructor of criminal justice. Torey, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Prior to relocating to Northwest Indiana, I was a federal police officer, and I'm glad to be here today.
Awesome. Let's dive into this episode. On August 24th of 2019, 3 Aurora police officers confronted Elijah McClain, that is, after responding to a call by an Aurora civilian about an unarmed person wearing a ski mask that looked sketchy. The 3 police officers who were involved in the incident, Nathan Woodyard, Jason Rosenblatt, and Randy Rodema, all said that their body cameras were knocked off during a struggle with Elijah McClain. McClain was forcibly held to the ground with his hands cuffed behind his back, after which Woodyard twice applied a chokehold. Upon arrival, paramedics Jeremy Cooper and Peter Chimitnik administered ketamine, later determined to be in excess of a therapeutic dosage, to sedate Mr. McClain. While on the scene, McClain went into a cardiac arrest. 3 days after arriving at the hospital, he was declared brain dead and was removed from life support on August 30th. Ms. Houseworth, what are you thinking about this?
So I actually had a chance to analyze the body cam footage, and I think as a whole, the entire incident is tragic, and I think it definitely could have been handled much different.
Now, that is something that I definitely specialize in, is body camera footage. And I want to say that, first of all, it is possible for body cameras to get knocked off of a police officer in a struggle. Body cameras are designed to not be, I would say, stapled to the body if an officer gets into a struggle. But in this particular situation, I feel like that the whole thing was kind of unwarranted. The reason for the struggle to ensue was because the officers did not de-escalate. I feel like they had a chance to de-escalate the situation, and instead of doing that, they escalated the situation. For example, the chokehold. Why did they feel the need to use that chokehold not once but twice, when we already know that that is a form of excessive force? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think that when you start getting into chokeholds, you're going down a path that could be deadly, because a chokehold can, become a lethal situation. You just don't know, and you don't know what sort of medical condition someone may have. So it can change in seconds.
Not only that, I've been to a law enforcement academy, not a official police academy. It was a sheriff's academy. You've been to a law enforcement academy. At no time in my training did they teach me a chokehold to restrain a suspect. Did they teach you that?
No, never.
So there are several defensive tactics that I was taught. And with them not teaching me that chokehold, my question becomes, why did that officer deem that particular move necessary in this case?
Exactly. And I think in a situation as a police officer, um, sometimes they get the mindset, I have to do what I have to do to, restrain this person. And I'm not saying that that's okay, but when you're in a physical altercation, your mind does go down that path, and it may deviate from training. You may just have to feel like, hey, I have to do this to get through this situation.
Now,
And
okay,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, I definitely agree that when you're in the situation, your mind can deviate from your training. That is 100% possible. No one ever knows how they're going to react when they're put in a situation. However, we know his hands were handcuffed behind his back. So what about that? Why are we using a chokehold on a man who is already physically restrained and theoretically no longer a threat?
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to what you're saying about de-escalating. And what I will say too is that it starts with a 911 call. And if you don't mind me kind of bringing it back to the 911 call. Okay,
Absolutely.
so let's talk about the caller. So he calls and says, hey, there's a suspicious person. This guy looks sketchy.
Mhm.
He gives them a description and says that he's wearing a ski mask. As a citizen, it's okay to be concerned about people who may be in your neighborhood.
Mhm.
And this case was before pre-COVID. This case is pre-COVID.
Pre-George Floyd as well.
Yes, pre-George Floyd as well. And I think now it is normal to see someone walking down the street with a mask. But it hit home to me because during the winter months here in Northwest Indiana, when I go out and jogging in my neighborhood, I wear a mask just like McClain was wearing.
Mhm.
And when I first bought that mask, I told my husband, I said, I have to keep the cold out of my throat. But even for myself, I was concerned what people might see in the neighborhood that I jog in. Like, hey, am I going to be called in as a suspicious person? But you're dealing with a 911 call that no crime was committed. So I think when they first approach him, it definitely should have been a little bit more subtle than what it was. They were abrupt, very aggressive, and didn't even allow him a chance to respond the moment that the video starts.
And that's exactly my point in the de-escalation that was not afforded to Mr. McClain. So
Absolutely.
what made him the standout that he did not that they, I should say, that they felt like he did not warrant that de-escalation measures that are taught in the law enforcement academy, because in law enforcement academy, those tactics are taught. So yes, you are in a situation and your training might go out the window. However, when you're approaching a situation, your training should be on 10. You
Agree.
have not, you don't know what that person is about to do. You don't know what the situation will be when you get there. However, all of your training should be on at the top of your mind. You should be like playing it in your mind, saying, "Hey, what if this case scenario? What if it's that case scenario? How should I react if this happens? How should I react if that happens?" But the first thing that they teach you in the academy is, I need to do the best for me and my partner so that I can go home safely. So the person that I'm encountering goes home safely. At no point in time did I see that happening with this situation.
At all. And I agree 100%. And you have to have strong communication skills as a police officer.
Mhm.
Verbal de-escalation is everything. It starts with that. And I also find it interesting too that he's coming home from the store. So
Mhm.
the store owner or the store clerk didn't have any concerns. He went to the store, purchased some items,
Mhm.
and he went on about his business.
Right. So you hate to make it a race thing, but could they have been in the mindset because he's African American, because he's wearing a mask, he was up to no good? Could that have been their mindset? So they automatically treated him in a manner that was less than what he deserved.
Definitely. Racial bias does exist in police departments. Implicit bias exists. We all have our own implicit biases. So it very well could have been a factor.
And it's just terrible because it resulted in his death. And I honestly feel like it could have been avoided.
His death, I believe, definitely could have been avoided. And even after the physical altercation ensues, it's three of you guys. So you mean to tell me that three of you guys cannot restrain this one person? Also, even after you guys have him on the ground, why couldn't you pick him up? And there's been plenty of other cases that we've seen over the years where people have died from positional asphyxiation.
We've talked about that here on Criminal Justice Corner before.
Right. So pick them up, because you don't know how their body's going to start responding or reacting. At one point, McClain, he vomits. If you're vomiting, you need to pick that person up.
Absolutely.
They could have placed him in the back of the patrol car and gotten him to calm down that way. I've used that tactic several times. Once you get them, detained, get them in those cuffs, put them in the patrol car. At some point, they will calm down.
Absolutely.
So there was options.
Definitely. And then for these two paramedics to arrive on the scene and to give him ketamine, which is a horse tranquilizer, and give him more than the therapeutic dosage. So he was approximately, I believe they said about 5'10", approximately, and then 140 pounds. And they gave him the equivalent of a dosage for a person that was 220 pounds.
Yep.
Now, I am no medical doctor. However, I've been on a scale many times. I can tell the difference between a person that is 140 pounds and a person that is 220 pounds. It's not hard. And
Definitely.
These paramedics have been to some form of medical training. You cannot tell me that they could not tell the difference between 140 pounds and 220 pounds. So them administering more than the therapeutic dosage, to me, was in the realm of criminal.
Definitely.
And so then that begs to differ. What was their thinking in that moment? Why did they feel the need to go above and beyond what was required of them and him in that moment? Why did they think that he was still a threat? Again, on the ground, handcuffed behind his back, 3 officers actively restraining him. What were they thinking? What is going on that they think that he deserves more than his body will allow?
Definitely. And again, not knowing someone's medical history either.
Absolutely.
You have no idea what you're dealing with. What else could be aggravated with a certain medical condition that he or she has. And what I will say too, being that he was autistic, now in the society that we live in, police officers are not trained to handle individuals who might have
mental health difficulties.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
Exactly. And I think that was a big part of this. They didn't know, but also that they didn't approach the situation right from the beginning doesn't make it any better.
Yeah.
And I think he was given pre-indicators, and that's why it's important to slow down when you're approaching a situation, especially something that has not become all the way criminal. He did not commit a crime.
Exactly.
He, there was nothing that was there. So I think the approach could have been a lot softer,
Yeah, and I want to just fast forward a smidgen in the story because in February 2021, an investigative report ordered by the city council, it was released, and the report said that the police officers involved in this death case did not have any legal bias to stop, restrain, or frisk McClain. So there it is in black and white. They had no probable cause, no reason, no justification whatsoever to even approach him. So everything they did everything they did when they approached him was illegal. Everything. So them talking to him, them putting their hands on him, them handcuffing him, them putting them in the squad car, them using the ketamine, everything was illegal at that point based on this report. What do you think about that?
I agree, because all you have is a 911 call about an individual walking down the street with a mask. He's the only thing that he is by perception is suspicious. And that's why I said you have no crime that has been committed. He's free to go. It's, I have the right to walk down the street in my neighborhood with a mask.
Mm-hmm. Now, in September 21, three police officers were arrested and two paramedics were arrested. They were charged they were charged with manslaughter and other lesser charges in his death. And then in October 2022, all five of them were awaiting bond. And now we know that it is September of 2023. Their trials have started now. So I'm eager to see what the outcome will be for these for the paramedics and for the officers, because this is a huge deal. We need to know how they will be held accountable. What are your thoughts on this?
The same thing. And I think it's definitely going to be interesting seeing how the jury sees this. Are they going to see it the same way that
we see it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing with trying to convince a jury what the law is, what you can and can't do, and how they just see it in the regular eyes of a civilian.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that there were protests based on this case. There were several rights lawsuits based on this case, and his family did win a civil rights lawsuit. They won $15 million. Yes, that's a lot of money, but it will not compensate for his life that was lost senselessly. What do you think?
I agree. I agree 100%.
I'm sure they would certainly rather have him back versus that money.
Definitely. And I mean, there's nothing that they could have done differently. Mm-hmm. And as I said, McClain was showing pre-indicators that, he had that disability. He said, I'm an introvert, please respect my personal boundaries. Also, even the 911 caller, Juan, he even said he's got a mask on and he keeps putting his hands up. And autistic individuals have a tendency to put their hands in the air and they do certain, hand motion. So the pre-indicators were there.
And they just either did not recognize them or ignored them.
Right.
Now, as always, we like to give our listeners some takeaways. And there's nothing that Mr. McClain could have done differently. But if you are approached by the police, Ms. Houseworth, what would you recommend to our listeners that they do?
I would say, do what you're being asked to do, because we've seen, where situations turn tragic because, someone didn't do what they were asked to do. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you believe the police are doing something that is unlawful, go with it, because you want to get out of that situation as best as you can and alive for sure. And after the fact, hire a lawyer. That's what lawyers are for if you feel like your rights have been violated in some form or fashion.
And I mean, I preach that to the choir all the time when I go to do my presentations, when I'm speaking to young people, when I'm speaking to students. Those are always my indicators that I tell them that is the best way to handle situations. Another thing that I will say is that try to do your best to remember everything that you can. It's easy to forget. I'm forgetful. I have to write everything down. So do your best to remember as much as you can. It's easy to forget, but just try to remember as much as you can so that you'll have that to tell your family. You'll have that to tell the attorneys. That's going to be critical in being in your report. If you have to go to court, if you have to tell their superiors, all of that is going to be very crucial in telling your story.
Absolutely. And what another thing that I want to add on to that is we all have had to dial 911 for something at some point in our lives. And if you feel like you're in a situation like Juan, where you think something is suspicious in your neighborhood, be careful with your choice of words. Make sure you're seeing what you think you are seeing, because even at some point you may become an eyewitness to a case. But just be sure and make sure that you know what you're saying when you dial 911, because this can change someone's life. Okay. And if you feel like something's not right, or there's something not right with the person, it's okay to say, hey, this guy might need to be checked on. He's putting his hands up. He hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't done anything criminal, but it looks like maybe somebody needs to check on him. And that can kind of change the response of a 911 call. A well-being check versus, hey, he's suspicious. He looks like he's about to go rob somebody. Or, it changes. It changes the response based on what you say when you call 911. So make sure your details are together if you're going to be a 911 caller.
And I definitely think what you're saying is accurate, because those details can help prepare the officer for when they arrive on the scene.
Absolutely.
Well, Ms. Houseworth, I want to thank you for being my special guest today. As always, you can find me, your host, Dr. Matthews, on Instagram at Dr. Jennifer Matthews. You can find the podcast on Instagram at Criminal Justice Corner. And then please like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube. Tell a friend to tell a friend about Criminal Justice Corner. I will see you next time on Criminal Justice Corner podcast. New episodes are posted every Wednesday. Thank you for listening.